Hi, my name is Graham Potter. Today I decided I would bring some fairly basic material to the workshop to show you some of the techniques that we use to actually begin bonsai. When somebody starts out their journey growing and creating bonsai trees, I think it can be very confusing because there's so many different ways to come at it and everything you read tells you a different story. So with this material I want to show you some of the techniques I use and have used since I began bonsai to create interesting trees from material that's fairly readily available. This tree, the story of this tree is that it was collected in Tuscany in Italy about 4 years ago. It's Cipestre sempervirens, which is the tall Italian cypress that's very typical of that area. It's not particularly common material in bonsai, but one of the things is this particular specimen is very similar to something that you might find in a garden centre, although it would probably be juniper or taxus or a similar evergreen species. As you can see, it's been cut down from a larger tree, so we've got this part of dead wood over here, which we're going to obviously have to work and incorporate into the style of the tree. Since it was collected, the tree has spent 4 years in its pot, and at this point the pot is absolutely packed with roots, and that's very important that your material before you begin work is well established, because at no point do we want to compromise the strength and the vigour of the tree. If we do, everything just takes so much longer. So, as I say, this tree is now very well established and it's ready to work. So what I want to do is show you some really simple techniques to turn this material into starter bonsai, and you'll find that it's much quicker than growing things from seed. Before selecting material for training as bonsai, it's important to consider the attributes of the species. As you can see with this Cipestre, the foliage is very nice and small and compact, not unlike juniper, and you can see from the branches that it obviously holds itself up, it supports itself so it doesn't weep and fall in any way. This particular tree has some nice craggy bark, as you can see on the trunk, and at the base we have a reasonable nabari. While there's not wonderful movement in the trunk, one of the things it does exhibit is some nice taper. At this point all I'm doing is removing the small amounts of foliage which grow down beneath the branches, the shoots that emanate from the base of the branches in whorls, and also removing any dead or very weak foliage which just goes to clutter up the tree and prevent light getting into the parts that we really want to keep. This branch is a good example of how we tidy up this material. The inner parts of the branches where it's been devoid of any real light have become yellow and weak, so we just go through those and remove those, and then you can see the main branch line beneath which there are a few shoots just hanging down. They're very small shoots and they're not significant in the final design of the bonsai, so we just go through and remove those. But what we do leave are some small side branches, because they will go on over the future of this tree to become the secondary twigging. So you can see here you've almost, with this species, with this type of material, got the beginning of a pad. Having cleaned away all the foliage that we don't need, now is the time to begin to shorten the branches. Shortening the branches is a very simple procedure. It's just a matter of deciding exactly where we're going to put the branch in the final design of the tree and the length that we need, and at that point we then take the central rib and prune this back, like so. And at the point I've pruned, I've left two small side branches. In future they will grow into secondary twigging and help to build the volume in the foliage pad. The first thing to do when you're faced with a piece of dead wood like this is to actually initially remove all the bark. For that I prefer to use hand tools, and we just keep cleaning back until we find something that's alive. Because this part of the tree has been dead for probably 3 years, you can see the bark is all dried out and it's quite hard to remove. It's actually quite difficult on some species of trees to actually ascertain what is dead and what's alive, but you can see here the very pale white line alongside the bark is actually what was alive, and next to it you can see the much darker material which was naturally dead. most of the dead wood, so what I have to begin to do now is to actually thin this wood down a little bit because it's too thick at the top, and also this area is very smooth, so we want to make some interesting texture. And like I say, to improve the taper, and the best tool to do this with is this, which is a Japanese branch and trunk splitter. And all we have to do is actually bite into the wood and split it, and then just tear it. And obviously it'll run with the grain, and as it does, it'll leave some interesting texture behind it. So you can see here we get a nice splintered, torn finish, which I'll now continue on down the trunk. Once you've got the shape that you want, the best way to finish that is to actually go over with a torch and just burn that away. So we just char the surface of the wood. Having used the flame to burn away all the sharp edges and all the till marks on the wood, we then just use a wire brush to go along and remove all the charred material. What that leaves us with is a nice, smooth, weathered look to the dead wood. And once we've removed all the black and all the soft material, we can then go along and actually lime sulphur the wood, and that will give it that nice natural grey colour. This is the dead wood all finished now, and as you can see, we've managed to improve the taper of the wood quite considerably, as well as the surface texture. And no live bark has been removed. This dieback is completely natural at this point. That's one of the benefits of waiting a long time for the material to settle down after it was collected, that a lot of those decisions are already made for you. So the work now is going to be actually wiring all the branches, and when we wire a tree like this, we basically need to shape all of the branches, not just pull them down. So what I'm going to do is wire through this entire tree, right from the base, or right from the edge of the trunk, right the way out to the tips of the branches. Basically, if the twig is woody, then it will be wire. Okay, this is the wiring all completed, so now we can begin to position the branches. When we wire a tree like this for the first time, it's important to make sure the wire is thick enough to hold the branch. And as a general rule, the thickness of the wire is approximately a third of the thickness of the branch. It will usually be thick enough to hold the branch in place, and it's just a matter of deciding exactly where you want the branches to go and bending them into place. It really is a very simple process. But when you bend the branch, it's important to hold the branch with both hands. So as you bend, you support the branch rather than just grabbing it and pulling it. That way you have a much lower chance of actually cracking or breaking the branch as you move it into position. I generally like to start with the lower branch first and then build up the tree from that point. And it's important to remember that a good bonsai tree is a combination of branch placement, and also the spaces that are between the branches are very important.